Welcome to a special playoff edition of our Detroit News High School Football Picks. I'm Rod Beard, and I'm joined by Tom Markowski. Tom, just a few weeks left in the high school season, but a lot of upsets last week and a lot of great games. Anyone stick out to you?
Well, locally, I think the Dearborn and Dearborn-Fordson game was a shocker, but talking to some of the coaches in the Western Wayne area, Fordson was a little banged up with some of the running backs, and, you know, Dearborn had a lot to play for in that game, and Ali Jimmy played a great game, and we'll see what they do against Cass Tech this week.
Yeah, and that's just what we look for at this time of year is a couple of upsets. The rivalries get a little bit more intense, especially in a game like that. Let's look at our 5 games this week, and we'll start with Grosse Ile and Dearborn Heights-Robichaud, 2 9-1 teams, and this ought to be a blockbuster game.
Well, I think both teams are going to have a field day scoring because Grosse Ile is one of the highest scoring teams in the Huron League, and Robichaud's been piling up points all season long in the Western Wayne. And it's such a difference in the style of offense they like to use, where the big play has really been Robichaud's specialty. And Grosse Ile just kind of, you know, goes a little sideways sometimes and goes vertical other times. I think that this is a really interesting matchup in the sense you can't get a read on it. Neither one of these teams played a common opponent. But I just think the speed that Robichaud has is going to be very difficult for Grosse Ile to. You can look at it on film, but once you get it on field, it's a different ball game. So I like Robichaud in this game.
I like Robichaud as well. They score about 40 points a game and give up only about 14. Grosse Ile about 12 points, but they're not as prolific in the scoring as you mentioned. I think that's going to be the difference here is game speed and tape speed. Certainly game speed is going to be a little bit faster. Move on to a rematch of an OAA White Division matchup. Southfield at 7-3 playing at Oak Park 8-2, and Jekyll and Hyde for Southfield. They've been so up and down this season. It's really just a case of which team shows up.
Yeah, I caught the first half against King last week, and they got off to a 14-0 start, but then they let kind of King back in the game, and maybe King just woke up when they held on to win that game. These games are such grudge matches, and you know, if they played again, then you might see the other team winning, so to speak. You know, I really can't get a read on Southfield in their, like you said, their inconsistencies. I got to go with Oak Park. They're playing at home. I think they got rid of some of their bad games, and you know they kind of leveled off after a quick start. And I think Greg Carter's team pulls this one out.
Yeah, Southfield's lost to Farmington, which isn't really a bad loss,
No.
but then the Adams loss is a big loss.
Sure.
But then they dominate Oxford. They beat King twice, and plus the win over Harrison. So you say, well, hey, which is this the great Southfield team or another one? I think another big piece of this is the game is at Oak Park, and I think their crowd has been into most of the games that I've seen this year. But this is just going to be a tough one to pick. I'm going to go with Southfield in this one. I think that they're able to go, and I think they're back. They figured out who they are, and assuming they get out of that Jekyll and Hyde mentality, I think they're able to pull this game off.
They're a young team, so maybe they got over some of their mistakes that a young team often makes. Against King, their defense looked really good, very opportunistic. So
yeah, a lot of questions about Oak Park at the quarterback position, though, where Mario Morris has kind of moved in, and whether they actually get over that game. They had a tough time against Cody in the first round, too, so we'll see if that kind of pans out that way. Another tough matchup, Oxford 7-3 playing Brother Rice 8-2, and after a lot of high expectations to start the season, Brother Rice has really rounded into a good season.
You know, there was a funny game last week. I was getting some text messages from the Port Huron game that Rice won, and they won by about 18 or 20 points. But it was a close game for a long time with Port Huron. They had a trouble with their speed. Oxford's it's a completely different team that they'll be on that field for Rice to face than what they had last week against Port Huron. Oxford's just going to thump you, and thump you, and hopefully by the fourth quarter they thumped you so many times that they find some holes in your defense. They haven't played a team like Brother Rice, though, athletically and physically. I think Brother Rice is really going to have their way with them. It might be a 10, 12-point game. In it, Saturday afternoon game, some of these games are being moved to Saturday, maybe to get away from the cold weather that's moving in. But I like Rice in this one. I
think it's going to be a little bit closer. I think Oxford, having played in that OAA White, they've seen a lot of tough games just about every week. They had a Harrison, or they had an Oak Park, or they had someone that they could really contend with. But again, that loss to Southfield kind of makes you wonder, I mean, who is this Oxford team? and the win over the Seaholm makes you think the other way and say Seaholm's a decent team and they really handled them really well. Will they be able to carry that momentum into this game against Rice?
If you're an Oxford fan, you got to throw that Southfield game out and just say that was a bump in the road that hopefully they won't see again. And that's a good point. They have played a lot of good teams this year, and it's not like they haven't played a good team. So maybe they won't be intimidated by Rice. They shouldn't be, anyways.
Yeah, but I like Rice in a close game. Another rematch game. Plymouth gets that win over Canton last week. They're going to get Churchill. Churchill's 10-0, best season in school history with that 10th win. Who do you think wins this rematch here?
I'm actually going for the upset with this one. I saw Plymouth play last week, and they look good against Canton. Canton struggles defensively, and I'm sure Churchill's going to play better than what Canton did defensively last week. But I just see, you look at Churchill's scores this season, they 35-31 over Plymouth, 43-40 over Canton. They're playing these high-scoring, close games
against their better competition.
Right.
56-54 against Walled Lake Northern as well.
That's another game that they're just playing basketball kind of scores with some of these teams. I think that's going to catch up with them. I think Plymouth's definitely going to match them athletically, which is one of the strengths for Churchill this year. Is they got the perimeter kids and they got Romello Brown in the middle to pound it. I just think Plymouth finds a way to win. They got a sound kicking game, and maybe Nate Eminger who's just a terrific all-around player for Plymouth, comes up with a big play at the end to give Plymouth the win. Yeah,
Churchill averaging 43 points, and their lowest point total is 35 in that game earlier this year against Plymouth. And so I think that when they play against their better competition, the defense struggles a little bit. And the offense doesn't score as much. And again, I think Plymouth is starting to roll now. I think they understand the intensity that you need in a playoff atmosphere to be able to win a game like this. And I think they put it together.
Churchill's a strange team. They only average about 40 to 45 offensive plays in a game. And their defense is on the field for like 60 or 65. So it's kind of nutty when you look at that. They're 10-0, yet their defense is on the field more than its offense.
Well, if you can generate some points off that.
Right.
But yeah, I think not having been to this point is going to be the difference for them, and Plymouth having been here in a big game like this when it comes down to it, and you struggle against your good teams. I think this is where Churchill maybe breaks down. Last game we're looking at, and this is another game that you kind of wonder, how did this matchup even happen? Utica Eisenhower at 8-2 playing Lake Orion at 9-1, and you wonder, did Christopher Columbus draw this map to get these two teams in the same district?
Well, I think Lake Orion caught a break, just as I think Clarkston caught a break by going out west and not having to play Lake Orion so quickly in the playoffs. You got Lake Orion basically in a MAC region, and they knocked off Stevenson, and I was surprised how easily they knocked off Stevenson. Granted, that was not a great Sterling Heights Stevenson team, but they were good, 35-0. And that's a team that only lost to Ike by 7. And Ike is I think, just hasn't come through like a lot of people thought, including me. I thought they would be a dominant team this year. They've been a good team this year. They really haven't been a great team this year. At times, Lake Orion has played at that level, and I have to stay with the Dragons, but especially playing at home.
Yeah, I like the Lake Orion and the way that they played all season, especially in that game against Clarkston. They lost that game by 7, but it showed you kind of what they are and their mettle, and that Clarkston had to come back in order to win that game. They very easily could be 10-0 and really have one of the top seeds and being able to roll through these playoffs. So I think they keep that going, especially with a game at home, and Utica Eisenhower having to travel so far. I think that's going to play a big role in the outcome of this game. So I think we agree on just about all of these games.
Except for the Southfield game.
The Southfield, yeah, I think that's going to be an interesting game. I think, again, Oak Park not having made it to the playoffs and not having that experience.
Kids haven't been there.
Their kids haven't been there.
Have not been there. You're right.
Yeah, and I think that's going to play a role too. But you can see how that game turns out as well as the rest of the games in all 8 divisions on DetroitNews.com. You can check out Tom on the radio this week, Sports Radio 1130. And you can see all of our coverage throughout the weekend and the winners as well as the brackets. For Tom Markowski, I'm Rod Beard. We'll see you next week.